Jerry McKinnon back on the staff again. The CCSD, comprised of enterprise funds consisting of pipes, pumps, valves, tanks, water, operating personnel, and supporting staff. That's what we're all about. We've got to keep those pipes clean. We've got to keep those pumps working without squeaky bearings. We've got to keep those valves so that they'll open and close. We've got to keep the water flowing. We have to keep the tanks full of water, and forget all of this other stuff. That's our goal, to keep that operating.
Okay.
Now, all of this friction that occurs between us, we have to recognize in some ways is just a reflection of President Reagan's point of trust but verify. That's all. We asking questions and we want some verification of what is given as an answer. Now, when we look at today's Cambrian, Joan Colvin said Tuesday, July 22nd, that if the protest prevails, that ends it. Then at some other time we'd have to decide if we want to go for another rate increase. Nothing can be done. No capital improvement projects. If you're going to finance things, you have to have a demonstrated reserve and balanced budget. We haven't been able to get the community to see, accept, or want that. That is so far from the truth. We want a balanced enterprise budgets that includes a built-in reserve to accomplish certain things. We want prioritized items on the capital improvement and the capital outlay, knowing what we're paying for. And we want the affordable rates to keep the water flowing in the pipes, the pumps operating, the valves working, and the tanks full. That's all we're asking for. Now, when we look back at the history, we see that it was proposed at one time with the Black and Veatch to increase our rates, maybe 60, 70% over a period of time, and that was rejected, and immediately, well, that's a strong word, but it didn't take much time after that until you came up with this proposal that comes up as a 27%. And once again, you find that some of the community is rejecting that. Rejecting it on the grounds that there's an $8.1 million loan included that did not have the approval of the community, that there's $3 million in there to refinance a project that's already completed. Somewhere or another, the word didn't get to us as to really what it is that you wanted to do. Now, at a particular time...
Wrap up, Jerry, please.
I'm sorry, but I got to say this. At a particular time, the Rates Committee of the CCSD proposed 15% increases, which would accomplish the same things that we all want to accomplish. But you didn't pay any attention to us. Now, why is it that we can't develop a system where the community can sit at the table and discuss finances with your staff, so that the citizens can go away understanding the process? That's not smoke and mirrors. It's just wanting to be an informed, intelligent group of people. Please don't think that it's all washed out. We could give you next week our proposal for a rate increase and sit down with you and discuss it and refine it, whatever it's necessary to make it work. But at least the knowledge is there on both parts. Don't think that it's over with, that we can't do anything, because you have a group of people who are very willing to work with the board to keep the water running through the clean pipes and the tight valves and the whole operation. Don't set us aside. We want to work. We want to help with. Thank you very much.
Mary?
I really didn't intend to speak again until I started to talk about the protest. I was down there every single day when they started counting on Tuesday, and it really took about 4 days before the League and the CCSD staff got done with all the sorting by address and getting all the names in order and trying to look at signatures and all those things. It was really Friday was the first day that they were actually going alphabetical by street name, where I could follow my own database and see what they were pulling out and maybe why they were pulling a ballot out. And it was really the most informative day was Friday. They went from A through F on street addresses. On Friday, Art said that the staff needed to come in over the weekend and look at some of the questionable protests and do some more reviewing, but the League of Women Voters was not going to be there over the weekend. So I thought, well, and obviously they needed to be in the CCSD offices, so the observers weren't able to go in on the weekend, which was kind of fine by me because I really needed a break. On Monday morning when we went in, we actually discovered that the League of Women Voters was invited to disposition more of the ballots over the weekend. And what had happened basically is they moved through the street addresses G through Z on Saturday and Sunday. So basically I missed out on every conversation, on every ballot as of Saturday and Sunday. I'm not accusing anybody of doing anything wrong, or I don't think anybody else is either. It was just that that was really the most productive point of when they were actually looking at the ballots, and I wasn't able to actually see at all what they did. On Monday, it was more of a cleanup kind of a thing where they were pulling out other ballots and talking about things, and we couldn't figure out what they were talking about anymore because we had obviously missed the Saturday and Sunday conversations. If any ballots are thrown out for signature verification or something like that, we asked Art, and I hope that we will have maybe 10 days or 15 days where we can contact those CCSD ratepayers and have them produce a canceled check, something simple where they've written a check to the CCSD and their signature is on the check, and maybe that'll verify that they're a ratepayer. We did notice that the CCSD record and the CCSD databases are lacking. I think they need to be updated. The ballots that were mostly verified were verified on the county database, which is a database I was using. I had almost all those names on my database. The CCSD didn't seem to be able to find on their database. Thank you.
Excuse me, Ms. Rudak, would you take a minute just for those people that they've commented a number of times they didn't know the criteria. Just we mailed.
So we mailed the rate notice,
yes.
And the criteria was printed at the time that they were doing it, and as I repeated it, it was in the very last page of the rates notice, and the only item you left out earlier was the fact that we were hopeful of getting statements, and we actually did get a few where people would state why and what their interest was in protesting it. Right. So the criteria were the portion of the rate increases, and it states here, a written statement of support or protest may be filed by the property owner and tenant customer with the district clerk at or before the time set for the public hearing. A written statement of support or protest must include and itemized the portion of the rate increases that are being supported or protested, the name of the property owner or the tenant customer, the service address, and the original signature of the property owner or the tenant customer. No copies will be accepted. So, you know,
those are the four criteria.
Four criteria.
That by all the ballots are being reviewed for those.
So the statement that our databases, were we slow? Yeah, we had connection problems. Art's already reported on that. Our system with regard to our billing utility accounts, Mary Webb does not have access to. She does not have that information. And I beg to differ that, you know, ours is erroneous, out of date, not current. Now, the property records, yeah, that required research. We had to go out because if the husband's, you know, the account wasn't in the husband's name, it was in the wife's name, then we had to go out and just verify, as Art stated earlier, that the property is in both of their names and that they are truly the customer, the property owner customer.
And
So.
did you on the weekend go through G through H or whatever?
And as Art stated earlier, came back in Monday and went through that information.
So it was Monday and not over the weekend?
We went through the information and came back and publicly reported it. We did no tallying. Well, I wasn't involved in that. I was involved in the research projects and reported it out at the meeting.
And the other thing, perhaps, Mr. Montana, you would clarify the concept people call these ballots. That it's not a ballot, but it's a protest statement, is that?
Yeah, I'm guilty of calling it a ballot, too.
Yeah.
It is a protest statement. And just to clarify, when Mary Webb said that I told her that the League of Women Voters would not be there that weekend, that's true. because at that time, we didn't expect them to be there, and then after thinking about it, after they had left, we thought it'd be better if they were there the whole time, and they were. I also told her that we had trouble with our database because our database doesn't reflect exactly the property owners, and that's why we use the county database. She did offer to give us her information, which I said may be 100% accurate, but we have to go directly to the public records to be able to use them.
All right, so we're working within a framework that's directed by the 218 process, and you're the legal counsel who advises us as to whether we're following the process properly, and in your mind, it's been done properly.
Has been done properly, and when we send out a notice that identifies the criteria, that's the criteria that we use, and each agency may do it a little different, but as long as it falls within the law and the Constitution, then it's acceptable.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the last speaker then is John McKinnon, and while John's walking up, Lynn, we don't address items that were on the agenda during the public comment. So
You told me that I could only speak during general comment, and so I changed it, but I neglected to put a line through biosolids.
all right, well, we'll see from John.
Put the line through biosolids, and I'll come up under general comment, public comment.
All right, and subjects that are not on the agenda have not been discussed. John?
Hi, yeah, John McKinnon, property owner. Just to shed some light on something that was said, and also anything I say is not insinuating wrongdoing. But I know some of the frustration of not being able to get access, and I was surprised Mary didn't say it, was that a lot of them, and I showed up at another time that it was open, but it was board direction to give public access. And when they were told by staff, at a certain time not to get access, they were surprised at that. So that's where they were, so, and that's where I would have been left. It wasn't that you legally had to do that, but you guys did at the last meeting say, well, let's give the public access, let's, give that clarity. So I know that was part of it. I don't think they thought anybody was trying to hide anything, but they were given access and then at one point told no. Just an observation. Another thing about...
Hold on.
Yeah.
Were they denied access on the weekend?
On the weekend, yes, they weren't allowed to go in there, but we weren't counting the ballots. That was done in open session, and we were doing things like looking at our database and our customer records.
Okay.
Okay, and another thing about validating signatures that for me seems, could be problematic. There's two things. One is like my signature that's probably on record maybe from 15 years ago, and I've gotten old and lazy. I'm MacKinnon, and that's how I used to sign all those letters, and I do MACK with a line at this point. So my signature looks very different. You might look at that and go, well, this isn't him. Another thing that happens is, and I probably have some life insurance policies by my wife that I don't know about, but she deems certain things that she signs for me. She does my signature. I know something like our water bill or signing up for that, she may put it under my name, but it's not a banking issue or anything, maybe it's illegal, but she might forge my name, and then again, you would have my ballot, and maybe, because I wouldn't have presumed that you were going to look at something on file. So just maybe something that could be, and again, to me, it just seems illogical. I think that you would be insinuating that you don't just check with the person that I understand they've missed a deadline, but you're insinuating that at that point they would lie and say, oh, I didn't put one in, but you know what, yeah, that's right. I think you could trust, we've talked about trust of fellow Cambrians and whatnot, that if, it should be a handful of people and it wouldn't take that much time, maybe did you protest or not? They would be perjuring themselves if they, wouldn't they? Or if they said yes when they didn't. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer.
John, could I ask you, would your wife be allowed to sign your name in a general election when you go to vote?
She wouldn't there, because that would be a much more, important thing. But when you're just signing up for your water service, rather than wait for me and she's busy doing bills and what she has to
No,
do, she
but-
might do that. And
But the protest vote that people sent in is like a general election. So your signature says who signed it. Just like when you come into the Vets Hall to vote, you sign, you say, are you so-and-so, and you sign your name, and they can see your signature that you,
Right.
whenever you put it in. Now, whenever you signed up to be a voter, that's
Right.
when their signature.
And
that
like
they-
a bank, like that I changed
I'm
my...
saying that you can't expect us to use something
But
if you
you're
want it
using
to
a
be.
verification that could be, nobody didn't know that was going to be some verification used down the line. That's all. It's just pointing something out. I'm not trying to be combative.
I'm just saying that
It's problematic.
the person who can sign the protest vote is the person's name, just like in a general election, not somebody else, not an alternate or whatever. So
That's my point. Maybe
yeah,
on
yeah,
the ballot
yeah.
is the correct signature, and the one you have is wrong. That's all.
Well-
I appreciate what your comments, but part of the both sides are learning through this experience, and I appreciate your input that it's not about dishonesty, which apparently some people have a hard time with that.
No, I'm not
But
suggesting.
218 is a fairly new procedure in California
Yeah,
law,
yeah.
so no one really knows how to do it. It's kind of like an election, but it's kind of not like an election. We need some form of verification, but we don't really know what.
Right.
So
It's
our
messy.
staff is doing the best they can, and we recognize that it may not meet everybody's satisfaction.
Yeah.
But, if there's another one, we'll try to do it better. I mean,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
we try to, we try to be responsive. We really do.
Yeah.
I try to be responsive.
And that's my suggestions today for you to consider, as far as that verification of signatures, because you guys, it's messy, and you're kind of making up certain things as you go along, because it's not, it's a new law. I understand that. Thanks.
First, I would like to applaud the gentleman on Drake Street, Andrioli, I believe is his name, who filed a complaint, a report about the destruction, the habitat destruction that was needlessly done in the name of lot clearance, fire suppression, and what is a little wetland area. Doesn't really make sense to the extent that it was done. I had noticed when I went down there that an area that I frequently drive by it does look like a helicopter was inverted in the general vicinity, and that it was just blown out and destroyed. Now, the last time Prop 218 happened, my memory is that the League of Women Voters advised that the next time you send out a rate notice that you include a protest form with it, which would have eliminated this entire business. I believe it probably would have been a lot cheaper for you when you saw the number of protests that came in for you to turn around, send out another notice, and a rate thing, a response, a protest response for people to send in that you wouldn't have to verify to the level that you are here. Voting wouldn't happen if every signature was put through a validation process. And I have no memory when I go to vote that they have a copy of my signature next to where I sign. I sign. It is accepted in good faith that I am representing myself at penalty of federal offense for me to violate that. So I just think there's been some lack of facilitating of citizens' right to protest this rate increase. And for it to take, I called the county. How did they deal with Los Osos? They did the APN number and a numerical number before each APN number. So when they came in, they didn't have to even look at they just put them in 1, 2, 3 order. They could count and see who had sent in a protest, who not. I know that I just think you had some time to think about this based on what happened in November, and it doesn't reflect. And I hope that you will welcome the same level of scrutiny from the public that you are giving to our protests. It has not been my experience that you welcome the same level of scrutiny that you are giving to the public's protest.
We'll end the public session. Board members have any comments?
I have a question of legal counsel. We have a closed session this afternoon, And one of the gentlemen who stepped to the podium threatened the district with a lawsuit. Is it permissible to add that to the closed session agenda?
If 4 of the members of the board vote to add it to the agenda because it requires 2/3 to place it on the agenda with a short notice, it may be added. The factual basis, I believe, would be the fact that we are in the process and probably won't have time after the next board meeting. I mean, we're in the process of dealing with the issue that was talked about under the threat right now, and that it will be done before the next board meeting. So if 4 of the members choose to place it on the agenda, we can.
Do you want to make a motion like that, or?
Well, since the results are going to be published before the next board meeting, and since the threat of a lawsuit has been made, the board won't have a chance to meet and consider what to do, so this would be the only opportunity to do that. So I move that we put the matter on the closed session agenda for today.
I would second that.
Discussion?
Would you go over what you just said again, Art?
To place it on the agenda tonight, it requires a factual basis that there's a need to discuss it now, and it can't be placed on the regular meeting because of some facts. And it's not just the mere threat, it's the factual basis to hear it now. So,
Is Director, is it your opinion that Director Sanders' discussion of it is sufficient?
yes, it allows us to talk about, and for the board in closed session to get advice on how to handle issues regarding this.
We don't necessarily have to take an action, it just allows us to talk. Is that what you're saying, Art? For that purpose, to have the general discussion, I would support the motion.